Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to All That Matters. I think, as we all know, usually this event takes place during the amazing Singapore F1 Grand Prix week. So it's appropriate, and we're very honoured that we have Zak Brown, CEO of McLaren Racing, joining us to share some of his perspectives on the motor racing industry today and, importantly, into the future. He's had to make some pretty tough decisions this year, but they've stayed connected with their fans and come up with some brilliant initiatives, which we're going to be talking about today. So, but Zak, last time we saw you at Sports Matters was in 2016, I think, when you were running JMI. Why don't you take us a little bit through your journey since then?
Yeah, first of all, it's great to see you. I wish I was in Singapore, as I know we all were, but looking forward to coming back next year for the Grand Prix. And yeah, as you said, last time I participated, I was running a company I owned, JMI, which I then sold to CSM, and had the opportunity to be a chief executive there for a while. But I'm a racing guy, I always have been. So while I appreciate other sports and have various passions for various sports, I wanted to come back to living the dream, which is working in Formula One, and got this unbelievable opportunity to lead McLaren, and also had an opportunity to go to Formula One. So it was a luxury problem to have, and ultimately decided I wanted to be in the garage, so to speak, competing, and joined McLaren at the end of 2016.
So I mean, you talk about being in the garage, but also as the CEO, you're in the boardroom. And pre-COVID, the media and fans would define success of any team by basically wins, right, and pole positions. And how does a CEO define the success of a team?
Well, I think certainly on-track competition, success is a big one. But also, we have shareholders who want to return on their investment. So I've got to look at, on one end, being as competitive as possible, and the other is managing the bottom line, and the blend of the two is what creates value for a sport franchise. So I'm trying to and we're until this budget cap kicks in a money loss situation. So try to be as competitive as possible while being as responsible as possible with their investment. And now very excited. I know we'll talk probably later on about the budget cap, but this journey to be a profitable world championship team, as a lot of other sports are. If you look at the NFL and MLB and cricket and golf, et cetera, all these great sports, the majority of the teams are profitable, and you see these franchise then trade for billions of dollars. And I think Formula One in the new era, we're going to create a lot of franchise value. And again, you do that by on-track and off-track success.
Okay, cool. So I think for the non-Formula One fan, for the non-motor racing fan, could you give a quick overview as to how does it work today? How are the teams competing? How are you traveling? What's the setup like behind the scenes? Obviously, there's no fans at the track side, but how's the championship being put together?
Yeah, things are going, given the situation the world is in, very well. We have announced a 17 race calendar. It should have been 22 races, but I think to get in 17 races is quite an accomplishment. That being said, we're only about halfway through the season, so let's make sure we get those in. But I think the revised calendar is good. Not long ago, the championship was 16 races, so and some think 22 might be too many. So I think we've got a full championship season. The revenues for the sport are television. Television is super strong, as you would imagine, with people not traveling. Television ratings are up. Digital and social continue to grow at an extremely fast rate. Our sponsors and the industry sponsors are very happy. They still need to market during these times, and really they're just limited on the hospitality, but all the other types of activations. And because people are so engaged, The engagement and the activation of our sponsor partners is extremely strong. The only place that we've taken a financial hit are the promoter fees, because the only way, Singapore as an example, they pay a healthy fee to Formula One, and then they recoup that fee by selling tickets. And so these Grand Prix that are still going on, they have their loss of revenue, which is being passed on to us. But fortunately, the industry reacted very quick, and we postponed what was going to be a new car in 2021 to 2022. And so that froze a lot of expense that we would have had. And so, at least in McLaren's instance, I've been able to offset the loss of revenue from primarily promoter fees with a reduced expense by delaying the debut of our new car from 21 to 22. So we're healthy, and the racing is great. We're currently sitting third in the championship. And, Formula One and all the teams have taken COVID very seriously. So we've had uh, almost no incidents that would ultimately put Grand Prix at risk of shutting down. We had one driver that got COVID, Sergio Perez, but because there's all protocols in place, as soon as that happened, they had the reserve driver ready, and it was kind of a non-event as far as putting the event at risk.
It's interesting. A lot of people haven't been traveling this year at all, but obviously the F1 teams have. Are you in travel bubbles? What are the rules for traveling as a business? What rules do you have in place?
Yeah, we're all in bubbles. Everyone's taking it very seriously, which is great. I think being at a Formula One track might be one of the safest places in the world to be. We're tested effectively, myself included, every 3 days. So I'll get tested before I go to a Grand Prix to make sure I'm healthy. I then, from that moment I'm tested, I have to stay in a bubble. Then when I land at the Grand Prix, as soon as I get to the circuit, the first thing I do is I'm tested, and then I'm tested again the Sunday of race day before I fly back, and that gets repeated during every Grand Prix week. So I'm tested effectively 3 days a week. So is the entire team. We're in different hotels. We're in bubbles. So Andreas, our team principal, and I have dinner all the time, and I don't see the engineers because they're at a different hotel. So everything's kind of ring fenced. So if you do have someone that gets COVID, that bubble gets kind of shut down, but not the entire racing team. So it's very well orchestrated. Everyone's playing by the rules. I've never washed my hands so much in my life. And you take it very seriously, and you have to. Otherwise, you're not only putting yourself at risk, but you're putting people in your team and the industry at risk, and that's not right.
That's good to hear. I guess you talked about how you've evolved as a CEO in terms of delaying the launch of a car and what have you. But take from the Singapore Grand Prix this time last year, or this week last year to now. How has Team McLaren evolved over that time?
Well, obviously, a lot has happened pre-COVID and then during COVID. I think we're a very cohesive unit. I changed up a lot my leadership team that started to happen the middle of last year. So we're just now about a year into everyone being in place, and it takes time to get the right people in place, get the right structure done, and then it takes time to have it all kind of come together. So that's been the journey that I've been on for the last year, is getting the right people, the right structure, and then working as a cohesive unit. And I think the results on track and off track are showing that we're doing that. But we still have a long way to go to get to be number one instead of number three, and we need to try and secure number three. And then also we have a lot of room for growth in our business with sponsor partners in digital and esports. We've just started an IndyCar team, so we have a lot on the go, but all the needles are pointed the right direction.
I mean, it's interesting. The sports industry and the events industry have been affected pretty much as badly or worse than many other industries, other than maybe travel and hospitality. But it sounds like you really are investing in the future, and a lot of people have said that COVID has been quite a good, well, a positive in some ways for sports teams to be able to engage with their fans in more strongly and digitally. What have you? I know that you mentioned sponsors, you mentioned fans at the moment. You've had some really cool new initiatives this year on engaging. What just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing to connect and stay connected and even grow your fan base.
Yeah, I think while obviously none of us want COVID, and it's done a lot more bad than good, there is going to be a lot of positives and learnings that come out of COVID that I think will are here to stay, which is great. I think as a CEO, you need to lean into cards you've been dealt, make the most of it, mitigate kind of downside, and then inevitably there's opportunities for upside. And so our engagement with our fans have been one of our biggest priorities outside of obviously the health of our team. And we have created something that's called Slipstream, which is effectively a live pre-game show, pre-race show brought from the MTC, our headquarters, into the garage that gives a insight to our fans and our sponsor partners, and we have some of our team members join of what's going on in the kind of build up to the Grand Prix. Formula One is so fascinating, and it's not a sport that has opened its doors before to let people see actually what goes on behind the scenes. We've done that. We do that every Grand Prix, and it's driving real engagement and behind the scenes access to McLaren racing, unlike it's been seen before. And then we do a post race show. So that's something that we've done with the fans and our sponsor partners. We've also done things like with Dell Technologies, our substitute teacher program. Kids aren't at school, they need education. We're all about science, technology, math. And so we partnered up with Dell to create a series along with their engineers and our engineers to teach students in a way that is fun and engaging, uses our drivers, our engineers. It's run quite a bit on CNBC and through social channels. And, it feels good to be able to partner with our partners and use the excitement of Formula One and our drivers, but to actually educate young men and women around the world. So, those are some examples of some very exciting things that we're doing that post-COVID will continue to do.
I mean, the Dell Substitute Teacher, I've done quite a bit of research into it, but tell everyone, please, a little bit more about how that works, because it's creating a purpose, right? And the world is about purpose and walking the walk and talking the talk, and you're really doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. We took some of our team members, our drivers, and some of Dell's team members, and effectively did virtual classes on science, technology, math. But with fascinating people that I think students are very engaged with. They get to hear from the head of strategy from McLaren Racing on how he uses data to make strategic decisions. And so for him to share his thinking, how he uses data, I think it's a fascinating real life way, to teach math, and gets very engaging and brings it to life in a way that makes it feel very real.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea, and if anyone gets a chance, not whilst we're talking now, but if anyone gets a chance to look up the Dell Substitute Teacher program, do take a look. Now, the other thing is you mentioned sponsors and partners quite a bit, and they're obviously extremely important to any sports team, whether it's racing, football, whatever. and during this period of COVID, how have you been able to protect those partnerships? If you look on your website, you've got, I mean, there's lots and lots of sponsors and partners in there. How have you managed to protect those relationships?
Well, we've been very fortunate. We have great partners, very close relationships, and not only have we retained every single partner, and some of them have been hit very hard during COVID, others less so, but it's impacted everyone's business. And we've brought on about 3 or 4 new partners during this time, which is unusual given the circumstances. And I think our partner management team, our commercial side of our racing team, we ran towards the issue, which was we know we're not going to be able to deliver everything that you're expecting in the way you're expecting it, specifically, hospitality and some of the live experiences. And we also recognize that your business is challenged. However, we think we can help you through that. And so we sat down with every single partner and created a new plan during this period. So in some instances, branding is very important. We know, we were supposed to do 22 Grand Prix. We're going to do 17. Fortunately, we can kind of measure the value of each Grand Prix. So we did some incremental branding to kind of go, we know you're paying for 22, you're only going to get 17, but we can make 17 the equivalent of 22 if we do these certain things, give you some additional branding, etc. Things in the hospitality, if you can't use it this year, we'll let you roll that into next year. So don't worry, if you have 50 passes, you're still going to get your 50 passes. You'll be able to use 5 more a year for the next, 10 more a year over the next 5 years, or 2 over the next 25, whatever the case may be. So we sat down and effectively reshaped everyone's deliverables to fit their needs during the COVID times. And we're flexible. We've extended some of our partnerships. Some people needed some, financial relief, and we're in this for the long game with our partners. So if we give you a little bit of help here, we maybe look to carry on the partnership a little bit further, and because everyone was very flexible with us, because we weren't short of having some pain ourselves, and we worked through on a case by case basis with each partner in a very proactive way. And happy to say we have every single partner we started COVID with and more, and everyone's very happy, and it's working very well.
That's very, very impressive. Just moving away slightly from the sponsors and partners and back to you as the CEO. Are there any companies that you have admired through the COVID period who have maybe evolved or transformed? Anyone that has impressed you that you've seen out there?
Well, it's hard because we're still in it, and you don't kind of know the end results of a lot of the decisions you've made. You're kind of living a little bit of the seat of your pants at the moment. I think all the companies that have ran towards the issue, I mean, you're just seeing on the news every day, people reshaping their business. I think that's the right thing to be doing. I haven't seen one in particular that kind of stands out. I think if I were to point to something that's impressed me, it's the Formula One industry. Obviously, I live in it, but that's kind of what I'm paying attention to at the moment. And I think the fact that we're traveling around the world, putting on these Grand Prix in a healthy and safe manner, and how serious everyone's taking it and how well everyone's executing against it, I think I give very high marks to the industry and everyone involved in it, which is quite a few. That's the television partners, that's the media, that's the teams, that's the tracks, and everything's going off in a very seamless manner. So that's been very impressive.
I mean, you're telling a great story here about, really overcoming significant challenges. I mean, everyone is impacted, but you really sound like you're taking some positives out of this. With the gift of hindsight, is there anything that you would have done differently over the last 6 or 7 months?
Um, Not that I can think of sitting here today, but that's probably a better question 6 months from now because you haven't seen all the um, end results, if you'd like, of the decisions that you've made. So I'm very pleased with how we've tackled the situation. We first and foremost focused on the health of our team members. We've not had, knock on wood, a single incident at McLaren Racing after Australia. So I'm quite proud of the fact that we've created a healthy working environment while continuing to work, a lot of it obviously remotely. Very happy with how the teams tackled our partners, and we're performing on track. So, to me, those are the three big data points: perform on the track, perform off the track, and in a health crisis, make sure everyone's healthy and good, strong communications to them. And I'd give our collective team, everyone's putting so much work towards that, a really good scorecard on all of those. So that being said, there's no such thing as being perfect. So I'm sure in 6 months' time, I'll be able to say, I wish we would have done that a little bit differently. But we're kind of living in the moment. And so far, again, knock on wood, I know I'm knocking on wood a lot. We've executed well and pleased with how the teams tackled the situation we're in.
No, you certainly have. Now, as you know, all that matters is we're known as the gateway to Asia Pacific. Now, you have a very global role, global outlook, as is Formula One. But if we could bring it just back slightly closer to Asia Pacific, what excites you the most about the Asia Pacific region, but also what challenges, what are the main challenges to success in this part of the world from a where you're looking from a global standpoint?
Yeah, I think the challenge is also the opportunity. I think it's a critically important part of the world for all businesses. Formula One and McLaren Racing is no different. I think there's an immense amount of opportunity because Formula One and McLaren Racing, I think there's a lot of room for growth and awareness. But at that awareness is also the biggest challenge, which is while Formula One is big in Asia Pac, I think it's not as big as it can be and will be in time. And I think we need to be more top of mind as a sport and as a brand throughout the region. I'd like there to be more Grand Prix. I think there needs to be a second race in China. I think the Singapore race is arguably the most important race on the calendar. I think they've done an unbelievable job from day one of the way the government is embraced it. I've kind of referred to it as the Asia Pac Davos. When you go to that Grand Prix, there is no Grand Prix that has more global C-level executives that attend it and attend it for business reasons. I applaud the Singaporean government and BS Ong, who's the promoter of the race. It's a fantastic race at night. It's a great circuit. It's a great city. And I think we need more Singapores to help elevate the awareness of McLaren Racing to enable us to have more impact. If you look at our partner base, all of them, or the strong majority of them, Asia Pac is hugely important to them. What we don't have are a lot of Asia based partners. And, in my previous role, I was fortunate to bring in, LG to the sport and Lenovo to the sport. And I'd like to see more of those. We obviously have partnership with Dell Technologies, so Lenovo wouldn't be a home for McLaren, but more companies with their homes in Asia Pac getting involved in Formula One. And I think we need to raise the awareness beyond what it is today for that to happen.
You also mentioned earlier that you have got into esports. And I remember last year in Singapore, McLaren did a really cool esports promotion. But do you want to talk a little bit more about how maybe are you getting into esports to engage with a younger audience, or what does esports look like to McLaren?
Yeah, I think we were the first team to really start an esports team. We're now in our third year, I believe, of our own dedicated esports program. And then when Formula One started a year later, we joined their esports efforts as well. I think, what's great about esports, and this is just my own theory, I don't have any data to back it up. If you look at a huge sport like football, soccer, it's inexpensive to play. You play it at school. All you need is a pitch and a couple cones and a ball, and you can put together a football match. And motor racing has typically been you have to start in karting. That costs a tremendous amount of money. And so while I think boys and girls, certainly I did, have a fascination with cars at a very young age, it's been very difficult to put a steering wheel in the hands of young boys and girls inexpensively. Now that esports, the simulation is unbelievable. I mean, it is very real. I think it gives us, as a sport, a real opportunity to put steering wheels inexpensively in the hands of men and women, boys and girls around the world, because I think the car is a universal passion in any part of the world. And I think that's going to generate a younger fan base, and that's now going to become the grassroots of our sports, which should generate younger fans. And I think while you maybe aren't a Formula One fan in a certain part of the world, I think if you get a steering wheel in your hand and you can play race car driver, that will convert fans. So it was very important for us to get in early, grow our fan base. And I think the younger fans today, they're all about engagement, and nothing's more engaging than having a steering wheel in your hand. And I think the technology is not far away from being able to actually compete in Grand Prix against Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton. And I think that's going to just be a game changer for our sport.
And compete against Zak Brown as well. You were a driver once before yourself, right?
back in the good old days. I think they want to race against Lando first. But yeah, and then Lando, we got lucky that he's one of those new generations. He's grown up on esports and sim racing, and so he has huge Twitch following. And so if he's not in a Formula One car, he's esports, and you can now tune in, you can watch, you can talk to him. So if I think about when I grew up, Ayrton Senna was my hero. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to meet him. If I could, meet him today, dial into him on an iPad, send him a text, he replies, and watch him in his house compete. I mean, that would just be unbelievable. It would give me a real sense of I know Ayrton, and that's what you can do now. And I think that's only going to go from strength to strength.
We've got a little bit of time left. I'm going to ask you a couple of more personal questions now. And this is a question I like asking lots of CEOs. What's the one thing you do now that you didn't do pre-COVID? And most people say they're baking sourdough bread.
I'm in the gym a lot more. That's something I've neglected since I stopped racing. But I'm doing them on video calls. So a lot of people go, "What's that in the background?" And I'm like a hamster on a treadmill doing conference calls, just walking, just getting some movement going. Otherwise, you kind of sit at home a lot or sit on planes. And so I've personally taken the opportunity to get a lot healthier. I'm not eating out at the restaurants and on planes and room service. And so I've personally spent time just getting healthier during this health crisis. And then, of course, these video calls, it's the new thing. And I think this will be something that we carry forward with. I think this is, a great way to engage with people. you're not distracted. Where if you're sometimes in a live meeting, you're on your phone, half paying attention. You need to focus on these calls. It makes you very punctual because you kind of tend to have these booked. Where if you're in a live meeting, people are sitting outside your office. So I think that'll change some ways of working, and I'm more connected to my leadership team than ever because I'm kind of standing still a little bit more than normal. So these are the things when we get back to normal, I hope we don't just automatically go back to our old ways.
Sure. And then finally, a lovely question we do like to ask is if you could, what advice would you give to your 15-year-old self?
Well, never quit because it's tough out there, and it's very tough, and you got to kind of stay with it. And then I've always tried to surround myself with smarter, more experienced people, and be a good listener, but then take decisions. So I'm fortunate I have a great advisory board. I've had an advisory board for the last 10 years, and these are the who's who CEOs, CMOs of great famous companies that I'm very envious of people that have experience because you can only get that with experience. So if I look at my business hero, it's Roger Penske, and he's in his 80s, and I think about what I've seen. I'm 48, and tack on, he's not 88, but he's I think low 80s. Another 30 years of experience. That guy has seen it all, and so I've liked to surround myself with people that have seen it all, so they can maybe share with me their learning, so I can avoid some of the mistakes that they've learned from. So I like to be a sponge. So I'd say surround yourself with great people.
Well, look, we've unfortunately run out of time. I could keep on talking to you forever, Zach. I've written some notes, but really, it's been fascinating listening to how you have very rapidly evolved in a very short space of time by staying connected. You talked about TV. You talked about how important fans are, obviously, and those sponsors, and so marrying all of those in some way and you've managed to keep all your brand partners on board that's a fantastic case history in and of itself. I love the fact you said it was by the seat of your pants. I think probably every CEO in the world is probably going, yep. And the knock on wood element as well was great. So, and lovely to hear that you're engaging with the younger audience. And I love that phrase you said, putting the steering wheel in everyone's hands. Zak Brown, if I can say, good luck for the rest of this season. And I think most importantly, I'm really looking forward to seeing you back in Singapore in person this time next year.
I'm looking forward to it, and I hope it comes soon.
Thank you so much for your time, and good luck.